This is a story of one man's ego trip to create the biggest e-commerce company in the world and the shocking methods that were used to achieve it. But as you will see, it's really a story about you, your life, and the choices you make that shape it. Already in high school, I knew that the corporate path is a terrifying perspective for me, and I was trying to avoid it at all costs. For some bizarre reason, I ended up working for the corporate world for 13 long years, and if that wasn't ironic enough, they were not just any regular companies. No, I ended up working for the biggest corporations in the world. Those of you who know me and who have been listening to me for years, you can only imagine how big of a personality mismatch that must have been. It was grueling 13 years of learning about the nature of human structures related to power, finances, and office politics. Those 13 years allowed me to have a valuable insight into the minds of regular people and those we call 1%. Longtime viewers of this channel who have been watching my videos for years remember how I escaped that world and how I created my own reality through educating myself and sharing the knowledge with others on social media. But those 13 years did not go to waste, and I can at least offer you now some knowledge that will be helpful in transforming your life into a desired version of reality. Something that most of you don't know about me is that before I became a full-time metaphysical bridge constructor and a YouTuber, for 7 years I was a corporate recruiter, stealing employees from one company and selling them to another. In 2016, I was hired by a recruitment company contracted by Amazon to support them in their hiring process. I need to stress that even though I worked for them, I was not employed directly by Amazon, and this is the reason why I can legally tell you the story. I was hired to be a part of one of these external businesses, and our responsibility was to fill all kinds of positions within the company structure, starting from what we would call low-level warehouse associates, their supervisors, and team leaders going all the way up to company executives. My role started from interviewing people and assessing their skills and experience that would allow us to hire them as temporary workers or permanent employees at higher levels. The hiring events were organized in fancy hotels and large exhibition venues, and the first thing that struck me was the scale of the process. There were about 50 of us, and we were interviewing and hiring hundreds of people every day. The demand for all kinds of positions in the company was incredibly high, and soon we exhausted access to all available candidates on the market, and Amazon tasked us with additional functions involving us in marketing and advertising of their positions. Because we were already busy with recruitment for about 10 hours a day, we were asked to do this in our free time and over the weekends. Because of the demanding nature of the work, we were soon joined by the Amazon internal recruitment team, who were delegated to assist us in the hiring process. It quickly became apparent that they are not like us. Our team was young, fun, enthusiastic, and adaptable. They seemed very cliquish, stressed, sad, and defeated. They always kept distance from everyone, and during the time I worked with them, I didn't make any friends. Something felt very wrong, and we were soon about to find out what. After a few months, some of us were moved to offices in the city center to take over the administrative part of the hiring process, managing candidates' records, contracts, communication, and offers, becoming an HR middleman between Amazon and the candidates. This was the moment when we started dealing directly with the corporate at the top, and when we became a part of the company chain of command. The job went from fun to extremely demanding, chaotic, and stressful, because we realized how Amazon got to be the giant that it is today. You see, when you create a company, as it grows, it is very difficult to stay on top of what's happening inside of it. As someone who runs a small video production business, I can tell you that as soon as you start dealing with tens of thousands of people, things will get out of control, and if you're lucky, you'll get to a place where you're as successful as others in your sector. But when your goal is to become the best company in your sector, you need magic powers, and we learned what that magic was. Massive amounts of sacrifice from everyone involved. This is how it worked. We would get a hiring order from the corporate for, let's say, 100 new seasonal employees because of the Christmas season demand increase. We would advertise the job, invite and interview the candidates, create the records, sign the contracts, and take care of communication. Weeks, sometimes months of work. It sounds like a straightforward recruitment process if it wasn't for what the company was doing with these employees. Once the contract was signed, they would put them on standby, asking them to turn up for work only when the company decided they would want them employed. We quickly learned that the 100 people they asked for actually included something like 20 to 30% of excess emergency workforce in case they had other employees leaving or them being fired. That additional 1/3 of the people with signed contracts were never meant to be hired. We had to do this on a regular basis to single mothers right before Christmas. In fact, we were getting orders where we wouldn't onboard anyone despite them having an employment contract in their hands. My job turned from being a recruiter to working in a call center, listening to deceived and rightfully angry successful candidates talking about how they declined other employment offers because of this contract. And eventually, we would just have to ignore them and stop taking their phone calls. Our job, as it turned out, was about lying to people. I started noticing changes in my team and how they were slowly turning from being passionate about offering people jobs to becoming robotic cogs in a machine of impossible corporate demands. I saw my team members shout at potential employees, lose or throw away people's records, yell at them over the phone, and all kinds of crazy behavior you would never expect from a professional recruiter. They wouldn't even refer to them as people anymore, but as numbers. We need more numbers this month. That was the language we heard from the top. That was the reality of meeting the demands of the company. Once I started seeing the whole process taking a toll on our office dynamic, and once we started taking it out on each other, I understood what it meant to be a part of that particular company culture and why their internal recruiters were so different. A team leader position was advertised internally, and me and my colleague applied for it because I thought, if I'm working there, I might as well try to make things right. I didn't get it, but he did, and he lasted exactly 3 weeks, after which he quit the company altogether, saying that he could not do this anymore. He never revealed what he found out once he took the job. For a long time, I thought that this is just how the company is treating people in the warehouses, but soon it became clear that the recruitment model at higher levels is exactly the same, and this template came all the way from the top. All of this was happening when there were talks about Jeff replacing Bill as the richest person in the world. And then it hit me. We were not working for Amazon. We were chasing a dream of one person at the top. We were all working directly for Jeff, and Jeff and his shareholders had a goal we knew nothing of, and they were using everyone who was willing to get involved to achieve it at all cost. That's the type of magic required to become the biggest. Everything started to make sense, and I understood the magical tricks they were using to get there. The insane turnover of people constantly coming and going was a result of the way the man at the top was setting the tone for the rest of the structure below him, and he was using the easiest disposable asset available to the company: people. I was personally dealing with candidates being rejected for being 5 minutes late to the interview, or employees being fired after a simple misunderstanding. No mercy. Everyone was replaceable. I myself lasted only 6 months before quitting, as it became mentally painful to be in that office. Later, I learned that the contractor I was employed by was actually replaced by another, cheaper company a few months later. No one was immune from that hiring model. Another trick they used was shameless exploitation. We were expected to work long hours as we couldn't meet the demands of every order. The shift we were hiring for was 4 days on and 3 days off, lasting between 10 and 12 hours. I don't need to tell anyone what these warehouse workers usually say about their jobs. There's enough headlines in the media about that. I've seen and heard enough from many employees for them to take legal action against the company, yet you hardly ever heard about this. I remember one instance where a very angry kid attacked me for changing his interview schedule, and once I red flagged his behavior to my manager, she took him on the side and eventually hired him because we didn't have enough candidates for this particular order. That was a regular occurrence until we heard about one of the disgruntled employees becoming an arsonist and causing millions in damages in one of the warehouses. The quality of the whole process was absolutely shocking, and the only criteria used for employing people was their ability to communicate in English, being able to use a computer keyboard, and having a clean criminal record. People with minor offenses were still being hired, from what I know. There was very little oversight over my decisions, and I could hire or reject anyone I wanted, but even the people who I rejected would somehow end up in a filing cabinet, and I would see them being interviewed again for some reason. I saw firsthand what one man's dream of building an empire is paved with, and of course, nobody forces you to work for that corporation. It's not a sweatshop in China, and it's not compulsory work, at least not yet. But if you wanted to be a part of it, you had to give it everything you have, plus 20%. In my 13 years of experience, I've never seen such a blatant disregard for human well-being. But I also have never witnessed a small online shop becoming the biggest e-commerce platform in the world in such a short time. So why am I telling you all of this? If you understand how this company works, you actually understand how your life works, and I'll explain to you why. What Jeff created is a subscription service, because by joining that corporate structure, people unwillingly decide to subscribe to this man's idea not only of his life, but also of their life. During these 6 months, I could never understand why these people would want to be subject to being treated so bad from the first moment they were in contact with the company. People say that the way it starts is the way it ends, and in my working experience, I met many who worked for Amazon, and most of them had the same thing to say. They were taking part in a ruthless, dog-eat-dog race to market domination and profit at all costs, where they were the cost. And it was actually a result of one man's vision. My team was forced to do a horrible job, and that was just the beginning of how Jeff's dream of online shopping monopoly was playing out for them. I always felt like telling all these candidates that there are other jobs that paid more and where they would be treated like actual human beings and not a number. Working for a man like him meant you would be his follower, as every direction he steers his company in, you will have to follow it. It was the revelation of these 6 months that allowed me to start understanding how a decade of my life worked up to that point. I was always an unwilling follower and an active constructor of someone's dream. Those of you who know my story might remember that not long after that, I decided to dedicate my life to you by creating truth-seeking and motivational videos that help you open your mind. I decided to work for myself, and you became my employer. I understood that by working long hours in an office, engaged in mind-numbing and meaningless activities, I wasn't building anyone's future but my employer's, which means that the moment they decide I'm no longer useful to them, they would leave me with nothing. I decided to ditch that crazy corporate world and dedicate my life to something that actually has a meaning. And I call this world crazy for a very good reason. If you happen to offer your time and energy to one of those corporations, you need to know that if you were to create a psychological profile of it, you would end up with a psychopath. Exactly as described in my story, a corporation doesn't respect other people's feelings, it is unable to maintain long-term relationships, it doesn't follow any social norms, and it regularly engages in risky and illegal behavior. It experiences no guilt, and it repeatedly lies about its true motives while being only focused on profiting from everything and everyone. You don't create a monopoly by being compassionate, sane, and caring. And if you want to follow it or be a part of their structure, you need to agree to incorporate these values as a part of your life. It is estimated that up to 12% of CEOs have psychopathic tendencies, but I can tell you from experience, that number might be as high as 50%. It is safe to say that in order to thrive in a corporation, you have to become somewhat psychotic yourself. You will not stay there long if you have opposite values. The Jeff story I told you has much deeper implications for you and your life. Unfortunately, in this system, many of us think that they do not have much choice but to subscribe to one of those corporate ideologies and be a part of it in order to make a living. In some cases, it's true, but mostly it's just not seeing the opportunities waiting in front of you. If you ever want to learn about them, schedule a chat with me and I can help you turn your life around, taking advantage of who you are. Once you realize that you are working for someone else's dreams, subscribing to their ideology in exchange for building your own future, you might start seeing that it's not the only service or structure you unconsciously are subscribed to. I made 2 videos about this in the past, one of them called Your Life Is Not Yours and the other one, Question Everything. They should be a great introduction into you understanding how we run on autopilot and how very little control we try to have in our everyday life. Think about that. Was it your idea to wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. every day, despite the fact that it makes you feel like a zombie? Have you ever checked if maybe you belong to the 30% of humans whose internal biological clock is permanently set to late-night activity, and why the 30% usually suffers heart attacks and has significantly lower life expectancy, waking up early like the rest of society requires them to? Was it your decision to eat according to the demands of the office time 3 times a day at 7 a.m., 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. again? Why not try 6 smaller meals a day and see how they make you feel? In fact, whose idea did you subscribe to that you have to go to work for a living? Today's technology allows you to live without being a part of an organized corporate structure. But if you live in one of those big cities, ask yourself, Whose idea was for that thing to exist? How come you subscribe to the notion that you need to be surrounded by sun-obstructing buildings, noisy vehicles, and dangerous people, all being incredibly detrimental to your mental health? Have you ever analyzed who benefits from humans being crammed in huge unhealthy conglomerations? If you did, you would learn that you follow an idea that was designed for energy supply and infrastructure efficiency in mind. It is the only reason why you're a part of it, not because it works for you. What about being subscribed to the worldwide debt management scheme, aka the modern banking system? Are you comfortable with giving away for no reason 40 to 70% of your time and energy in the name of being a part of a system you never designed, but also never questioned? You're subscribed to it, yet it's not something you created. In fact, you don't even know if you need to use money. And what about the family model that you were part of, or the one that you will create? Is that the right subscription model for you and your children? What if you were to live with all your friends and family in a commune where you raise your children together and you support each other, not having to work that much? Is having children the right life model for you at all? And that relationship of yours, is this someone you followed because they have a lot to offer to you? Or are you stuck in a very expensive subscription service that costs you your happiness and your energy? Do you even need a relationship? I can go on like this for a very long time, but here's the deal. When you come to this world, you will be surrounded by these subscription services everywhere you go. You'll be offered or forced to participate in something, goal of which is to create a structure independent of you and not beneficial to you. You didn't come here to be an element in a system you have nothing to do with. You didn't decide to show up on Earth to be someone's property with no control over your life. You came here to express your identity and to realize your full potential, and you will never achieve it by working towards someone else's goals. You're here to experience and explore as much as you can, and that's how your life becomes fulfilled. The path to happiness is not through the gates of some giant corporate monopoly, but by having a courage to create things yourself to the benefit of you and others around you. It's only when you start thinking for yourself and making your own conscious choices, you realize how colorful and generous life actually is. Everything you do in your life is supposed to increase your sense of worth. You're supposed to experience as much love and joy in this life as possible. Every day should bring you hope for better tomorrow and a more prosperous future for you and your loved ones. You're not supposed to put your existence on hold while helping others build their future. You need to have the intellectual freedom to engage in the incredible process of self-discovery and self-defining. You come here as an amazing soul, thirsty of all the human experiences, yet we put them on hold in the name of fear and insecurity, or even simple laziness. Keep in mind that the longer you stay subscribed to these social programs, the more you lose yourself, eventually paying the price in your identity and the quality of life. Your time here is limited, and it's important that you fill it with everything that you came here for, and you only find out what it is once you create the freedom to leave your comfort zone and once you become the master of your destiny. It's time to unsubscribe and unfollow everything and everyone that does not serve you. Don't ever let any Jeff magically replace your smile with a corporate logo.